Let's go back 2 years when everything started falling into place. At that time, our little girl was only 3. My work kept me busy, leaving little time to cherish moments with her. Every second we spent together was priceless. She was entering that phase where kids begin forming meaningful sentences. With my wife handling most of the parenting duties as a stay-at-home mum, I found myself working 6 days a week after snagging a promotion I felt unprepared for, though it paid well. And to top it off, another baby was on the way. Since our daughter started talking, hanging out with her has been a blast. She took her time with words, but once she began, there was no stopping her, and I cherished every word. Her voice served as a daily motivation for me to work hard, to provide for my family. On a cozy Saturday evening, I relished in my beloved weekly tradition, snuggling up with my daughter, watching movies alongside our trusty 6-year-old pit bull. The highlight, her lively commentary on whatever unfolded on the screen. If a cat appears, she'll excitedly mention my grandma's cat. If there's a dog, she'll joyfully announce the name of our pit bull. If she spots a character resembling me, she'll playfully point at the screen and exclaim, "Day Day," her nickname for Daddy. And if she sees someone resembling my brother, she'll happily chirp, "Uncle," and so forth. This delightful routine continues until she either tires out or drifts off to sleep. Nowadays, it's challenging to find PG-13 movies without any romance, so I steer clear of R-rated ones when watching with my 3-year-old. Luckily, we settled on Wonder Woman 1984, which isn't overly romantic and is suitable for family viewing, a choice I could thoroughly enjoy with my daughter. Hoping that a powerful female hero would empower her and boost her confidence as she grows, we eagerly watched. Then, during the romantic scene between Gadot, portraying Wonder Woman, and Chris Pine, something caught our attention. In the midst of the tender moment, my daughter suddenly exclaimed, "That's Mama and Ita." She usually calls her mother Mama and me Day Day. But who's Ita? I initially thought she might have misspoken. Our relatives visit frequently, and I've never heard her mention anyone named Ita before. It puzzled me. I pondered her words for a moment. Then I rewound the romantic scene to see if she would mention Ita again, and indeed she did. I turned to her, gazing into her beautiful, innocent eyes, and softly asked, "Who is Ita?" She simply pointed to the ceiling. It made no sense to me. I thought she was pointing at God or something, so I tried switching to a different movie with a romantic scene to see if I'd get the same reaction from her. Sure enough, my daughter exclaimed the same thing. Perhaps she's trying to convey a message to me, but I couldn't grasp what it might be. At that moment, the identity of Ita was the greatest enigma to me. I understand that some may argue against trusting children's memories or words, and ordinarily, I'd agree. However, around the same time, I stumbled upon a news story about a 3-year-old who recalled his past life and identified his murderer. Children can often be like oracles, especially at that tender age. Although the circumstances differed, one involving reincarnation, the other the present, I couldn't ignore the uncanny parallels in age. Encountering that story reinforced my belief in the prophetic nature of children. The whole scenario felt surreal, especially with the enigma surrounding Ita. I couldn't bring myself to inquire about Ita from my wife, fearing she might withhold the truth. At that time, I placed unwavering trust in her, expecting nothing less than complete honesty. Speaking of my wife, she hails from the Middle East and moved to America during her teenage years with her family. Raised in the Islamic faith, she wears her heritage proudly. While my roots align with hers, being born in the US, our union was blessed by familial ties, fostering a robust support system. Though we identify as Muslims, our religious fervor is moderate. We partake in all Islamic celebrations, dutifully observe traditions, and frequent the mosque on Fridays. Occasionally, my wife dons a hijab, a personal choice I neither enforce nor object to. It's her autonomy at play. She's 23, and I'm 28. After completing her education degree, she taught at a high school until we decided she'd be a stay-at-home mum once we started our family. I work as a financial manager, relatively young for my position at a major bank. Our recent move to this apartment followed my promotion, which came with a $40,000 salary increase. With that backstory set, let's proceed. That night, as I rocked our baby to sleep, I couldn't shake thoughts of who Ita might be. Accusing my wife without evidence seemed foolish. She was the perfect spouse, diligent in her chores, caring, and our marriage was fulfilling. There were no signs of trouble. So why jump to conclusions just because our daughter mentioned Mama and Ita after watching a movie scene? It felt like a stretch, and I had no clue who Ita was. It could have just been a product of my daughter's imagination. Once an accusation like that is voiced, it can't be taken back. My next move? Finding out who Ita really was. Despite being haunted by the suspicion of my wife's involvement with Ita, the next day it slipped my mind entirely as I carried on with my routine. Skip ahead. 2 months? 9 months since we moved to our new place. Walking our dog at the nearby community park, it was me, my daughter, my wife, and our furry companion. Along the way, we encountered another man with his dog, strolling from the opposite direction. What caught my attention first was how our dog reacted. It was as if he knew the other dog. And then, they both seemed to recognize each other. I quickly pulled on the leash when I noticed my dog darting towards the stranger and his furry friend. Glancing at my wife, she avoided acknowledging the peculiar scene by steadfastly gazing forward, evading eye contact. When my daughter spotted the man, she cheerfully exclaimed, "Hey, hey, hey!" addressing him in the familiar manner she reserved for family. Yet his response was distant, as though unfamiliar with her. He brushed past us, tethered to his dog, feigning ignorance and disconnect. Initiating a brief exchange of smiles, I attempted to bridge the awkwardness, but his demeanor remained aloof. In less than 5 seconds, this encounter left a lingering sense of unease. Turning to my wife once more, she remained fixed ahead, seemingly oblivious. Inquiring about the man's identity, her nonchalant reply labeled him merely as an upstairs neighbor, suggesting scant acquaintance. I questioned how our daughter knew the name of our upstairs neighbor, considering he was just someone living above us. She explained that he often lets his dog off the leash, and it frequently comes to play with ours, which is how our daughter knows him. Seemed plausible, right? But then I recalled a moment 2 months prior when my daughter, during a movie, pointed out 2 romancing couples, calling one Mama and the other Eta, the same name she just used for our neighbor. Curiously, when asked about Ita before, she had pointed to the ceiling. Coincidence? Doubtful. Now my wife has confirmed that Ita is indeed our upstairs neighbor. Something fishy was going on, and I was determined to uncover the truth. My wife's strange behavior only added to my suspicions. I never imagined she would deceive me, and I've never caught her in a lie before, but something didn't seem right. We walked in unusual silence after encountering a man I now recognize as Ita. I pondered the possibilities, how my life could unravel if my wife were truly having an affair. The idea of her being intimate with another man was revolting. I felt a deep sense of disgust, even though the evidence was only suggestive. As we approached our apartment, my wife noticed my unease and asked what was wrong, to which I replied with silence, lost in my thoughts. Upon reaching home, I suddenly questioned my wife about the man's name, which visibly unsettled her. She claimed she didn't know. My direct inquiry caught her off guard. I could sense she knew I harbored suspicions, but it wasn't yet time to confront her. It was time to gather evidence. That consumed my thoughts the following day. Upon noticing smoke, one tends to infer the presence of fire. Scouring the internet for clues, I stumbled upon online forums and shared my predicament to prevent internalizing it and to garner support. Hoping to encounter someone who had weathered a similar storm, perhaps shedding light on whether my wife harbors affections for Ita, or perhaps receiving a reality check, cautioning me against jeopardizing my family over unfounded suspicions. Priority number 1. Unearthing Ita's true identity. Is Ita merely a pseudonym, or perhaps his pet's name? If it's the latter, my doubts would dissolve, as it's implausible for a romantic liaison to involve a canine. This realization underscores the whimsical nature of my daughter's musings, akin to those of a 3-year-old, not to be taken seriously. Suggestions from the forum dwellers steered me towards hiring a private investigator to unveil the identity of our upstairs neighbor. Given my time constraints and inability to snoop through his mail or tail him, I considered taking a break from work to shadow him and uncover his daily activities. Yet, hiring a private investigator seemed a more pragmatic, cost-efficient, and emotionally bearable option. After scouring the web, I stumbled upon a PI specializing in infidelity cases. Providing him with access to my apartment and outlining my routine, I tasked him with unveiling details about our upstairs neighbor, his identity, workplace, daily routine, and relationship with my spouse. The initial week of surveillance proved challenging, as I strived to maintain a facade of normalcy around my wife, concealing any suspicions while extending my work hours. Despite growing unease, I refrained from resenting my wife, cognizant that my suspicions were still speculative and based on circumstantial evidence. A week later, I rendezvoused with the private investigator to go over his findings. Ethan, the subject, was identified with both his first and last name, although I'm withholding the last name for confidentiality reasons. Ethan is 36 years old and recently divorced, sharing custody of his 2 children with his ex-wife. Due to the divorce settlement, Ethan's ex-wife retained the house, hence why he resides in our apartment. Ethan is currently dating and is a regular gym-goer. Professionally, he's a logistics manager at a distribution company, overseeing a team mostly comprising female staff. The investigator presented a folder brimming with snapshots of my wife and daughter at the dog park, seated alongside Ethan and my daughter while their dogs played nearby. The investigator noted their interaction as amicable, akin to friends, devoid of physical contact, but filled with laughter and no overt signs of affection. So far, things weren't looking good for my wife. My wife lied that she doesn't know him and she doesn't know his name. But here she was, seen on several photos, chatting with him. Now, I have strong reason to conclude that my daughter was right all along. Ethan sounded very much like Ita. The most disturbing part was that my daughter may have witnessed them having sex. It still bothers me till this day. We haven't even done it in front of my daughter, even when she was a few months old, or kiss each other in front of my daughter. Even though I would consider us as having a healthy excess life, I wouldn't say that we are the affectionate type. We leave that in the bedroom. The private investigator asked if I wanted him to continue, and I said I would like to reiter in him for 2 more weeks to see if he could find out more. I really didn't know what else I wanted him to find out. Catching them in public was impossible. They reserved their affection for private spaces, like my apartment or his. Despite this, I was intrigued after our initial discussion and eager for more information. In the subsequent debriefing, the private investigator discovered Ethan's tangled web of relationships. He was spotted with 3 different women, 2 of whom were his employees, a clear breach of professional conduct. However, there was no significant revelation about my wife, except for her frequent visits to the park with our daughter and Ethan. Upon further investigation into Ethan's mistresses, one was found to be married with children, while the other was single. The third remained elusive. Ethan's actions painted him as despicable, a man who not only betrayed marital vows but also abused his power at work. Furthermore, there's a strong suspicion that he's engaging intimately with my wife. I desperately sought more proof to validate this suspicion, fearing that his actions might not only jeopardize my health by exposing me to STDs, but also cast doubts on the paternity of our unborn child. To gather evidence, I enlisted the help of a private investigator who provided me with a concealed camera for installation in our home, along with remote monitoring instructions. Initially, there were no significant findings during the first week of surveillance. Ethan appeared to be absent from my residence. The situation persisted into the second week, leaving me on the brink of abandoning the endeavor to avoid discovery by my wife, who diligently cleans the house daily. While I could confront her with the evidence at hand and seek separation on grounds of emotional betrayal, it remains weak in proving actual infidelity, as it merely exposes her deceit. Though tempted to disclose our daughter's observations, I refrain, fearing it might strain their relationship, a consequence I wish to avoid. It's possible they're doing it in his place, which means I wouldn't catch a thing. Having a private eye stationed at our apartment building's stairs, spying on my front door all day, would be futile. I almost lost hope, but quitting now isn't an option. So I gave it one more week and then jackpot. Watching it unfold stirred up a whirlwind of emotions. Sadness, humiliation, but also a sense of closure after enduring this ordeal for 4 long months. It took 11 months since we moved in, but my daughter's innocence was finally proven. She confessed to me 4 months back, and now I've caught her red-handed. Here's what the camera revealed while I was at work. My wife took our daughter out to walk the dog. When they returned, Ethan was with them. They entered our apartment together, with Ethan trailing behind my wife and my daughter leading the way. Ethan approached her from behind, wrapping his arms around her and gently kissing her neck. As she turned around, they surrendered to each other in a passionate embrace. The weight of her 6-month pregnancy hung between them, a reminder of the uncertainty surrounding their relationship. Armed with indisputable evidence, it was time to confront her. Their intimacy had not progressed beyond kissing and touching, but the breach of trust was undeniable as he walked away. My heart broke at her betrayal, a stark contrast to the love and respect I had shown her. I had never laid a hand on her or disrespected her trust. Yet, she had chosen to jeopardize everything, including my health, by engaging in an affair. Her reckless behavior endangered not just me, but also our livelihood. She had betrayed me in the worst way possible, and now it was time to hold her accountable for her actions. Upon arriving home, I confronted my wife regarding her connection with Ethan. She flat out denied any involvement, feigning ignorance. But the anxiety shimmering in her eyes revealed her inner turmoil. Her secret was now out in the open. Displaying the photos of them at the park, she eventually confessed to recognizing him but kept it hidden, fearing my judgment. Her deception persisted, claiming their interactions were innocent, swearing nothing beyond that occurred. However, when confronted with the evidence from the hidden camera, her demeanor shifted to shock and embarrassment. Initially, I didn't feel anger or any intense emotion. My tears had been exhausted over the past 2 months. She knelt before me, clasping my feet, pleading. I inquired about the duration of the affair, to which she confessed it began 2 months after we moved into our apartment, now nearly a year ago. Curious, I asked for its origins, and she recounted a chance meeting at the park. He posed as a fitness trainer, luring her to his apartment gym out of boredom. Her admission, not mine. Though time has passed, the sting remains, the memory of betrayal still fresh. I can't shake the feeling of being publicly shamed, as if dirt still clings to my face, even now. There was a torrent of tears from both sides, as she pleaded with me not to end our marriage, emphasizing the shame it would bring upon her and her family. I summoned her parents and, in her presence, disclosed all her misdeeds. I made it clear to my wife that I couldn't allow her to remain in my apartment any longer. Despite her name being on the lease, I couldn't evict her on the spot. Additionally, she was pregnant, though the paternity of the child was uncertain. I informed her that she would have to sleep in a separate room until I arranged for her to move elsewhere. I promised to cover the rent for a new place for 3 months while she searched for employment. After this period, she would need to support herself. While many would advocate for immediate eviction, I chose to handle the situation differently. But I found myself in a tough spot. It's not as simple as that. I need her to take care of my daughter until I can arrange for a babysitter. I can't afford to miss work or lose focus because I have a lot of responsibilities. I was stuck in a difficult situation, unsure about the paternity of the pregnancy. 2 days later, I helped her find an apartment and had her sign divorce papers. We chose mediation to save money, and we ended our 5-year marriage. She had been a stay-at-home mum for 4 years, earning significantly less than me when she did work. The divorce agreement mandated that I pay alimony for 18 months. She couldn't go back to her family because of the embarrassment. Almost everyone knew why we got divorced. As for Ethan, we found out his lover also had a boyfriend. We provided evidence of their affair to her husband. Both the husband of the co-worker with children and the boyfriend of the other woman received proof of their cheating. HR was alerted, and we presented the proof, highlighting the violation of company rules. Luckily, his employer had strict policies against such actions, leading to his dismissal. I hardly interacted with Ethan until that walk with the dog. However, driven by rage, I schemed to ruin his life, just as he had ruined mine. After my plan unfolded, he found himself jobless and compelled to move elsewhere. Whether he suspected my involvement remains unclear. Maybe my ex-wife shared some details. About 6 months after my daughter informed me about Mama and Ita, my ex-wife delivered a baby. Despite our separation, I hurried to the hospital to confirm the baby's paternity. Ethan's Hispanic background, common in our region, meant the child could easily be thought to be mine. Choosing to undergo a paternity test, we awaited the results until the next day. Unlike the joyous celebration that surrounded the birth of our daughter in our tight-knit community, my ex-wife's pregnancy was a time of isolation and regret. I was the lone supporter, clinging to the slim possibility of paternity. From her hospital bed, she pleaded for forgiveness, her heart heavy with remorse. Despite her sorrow, my presence brought her some comfort until she went into labor. Ethan received a letter from me during his hospital stay, informing him about the baby. And what did he do? He didn't bother to come. It wasn't until much later that my ex-wife mentioned he only started showing interest after she took legal action for child support. Now, she's working tirelessly, making ends meet on a modest teacher's salary. Life isn't easy, especially compared to our past. Despite having agreed to share custody in our divorce, I've found myself being the primary caregiver for our daughter. I've employed a full-time nanny because I'm determined not to let her reside in her rundown apartment or face hardship. I'm committed to giving her a higher quality of life. Remember to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Liking the video helps the algorithm. Thank you so much, and I hope you have an amazing day.